Great to see everyone here this evening. My name is Chris Sell. I'm the Director of Alumni and Entrepreneur Engagement here at Michigan State for the Burgess Institute. I'd like to welcome you to this evening's Innovate State. Innovate State, as you may know, is our fireside chat speaker series hosted here in the heart of campus. So not only am I welcoming all the folks here in the Entrepreneurship Lab of the Minskoff Pavilion, but also want to welcome folks that are tuning into the live stream and that may watch this video after the fact, because we do record this and archive it at our site at eship.msu.edu. Before we get started with tonight's esteemed guest, I just want to share a few quick announcements about upcoming programming or opportunities. How many of you are a student here at Michigan State? And then how many of you have applied in the past to the Burgess New Venture Challenge? Anybody? Okay, excellent. So a whole bunch of new potential participants in the room tonight. The Burgess New Venture Challenge is the campus-wide student pitch competition here at Michigan State that we host in the spring. We have approximately $50,000 in prize money that we award. Top prize is typically $15,000. And the application process for that program just went live yesterday. So if you are a student with an idea and you'd like to pursue that further and potentially compete against others here at Michigan State, you can actually apply now. So if you go to eship.msu.edu, go to events, look for the Burgess New Venture Challenge, you can find the application there. We also have some other upcoming programs just in the next few weeks that are really fun. Even if you don't want to compete or participate, you can attend. That includes the Michigan Collegiate Startup Challenge, which is taking place next Friday. And that's going to be taking place here on campus, here in the Minskoff Pavilion, both in this room and the multi-purpose room. That's actually going to involve different student venture teams from, I think, 10 different colleges, universities across the state. I think upwards of 20 teams. And they're going to be competing and pitching against each other. And you can actually attend that event for free, no charge. So we encourage you, if you want to just, it's like, if you like ABC Shark Tank, but you like watching fellow students from across the state compete, you can actually sign up to attend for free. So again, just go to eship.msu.edu. You can learn more information about that event there. We also have, has anyone here been a participant in 2-Day Venture? Excellent, wonderful. So we host 2-Day Venture 4 times a year. And the second 2-Day Venture of this academic year is taking place actually this weekend. It's too late to register if you have not already for this week's program, but I do want to just encourage you to consider applying for the next 2-Day Ventures that we have taking place in the winter. The next one will be in February, and then another one I think at the end of March, if I'm not mistaken. And so super low cost, or do we charge? Team, I can't remember. No, free. It's free, and we feed you handsomely. It's super fun. As our colleagues sometimes call it, it's like pickup basketball for entrepreneurs. It's a really fun opportunity to come together, coalesce around ideas, form teams, and then you get to pitch to a panel of judges for some prize money at the end of the 36 hours. So highly encourage you to think about that in the future. Last but not least, we have several more Innovate States yet this semester. We actually have 3 this month. So the next one is in about 2 weeks. It's Tuesday, November 15th. And that will be featuring alumna Rachel Silver. She's a James Madison College graduate. And she's the founder and CEO at Love Stories TV. She's based in New York City. So she's flying here for the day. So again, Tuesday, November 15th, about 2 weeks from today, just less than that, taking place right here in the Entrepreneurship Lab of the Minskoff Pavilion. Free to attend. We feed you with lots of pizza and breadsticks, so make sure and come out for that. It's going to be a great time. So again, just want to welcome all of you tonight. You're really in for a treat. Tonight's speaker and distinguished guest is just incredible. We've been able to spend the day with him. Really appreciate Mike Vichich making the trip here from the other side of the state to spend time with us. Met with lots of different student groups and faculty and staff today. Spent some time with some of our student founders at the MSU Hatch, and we're just so pleased that he's willing to give up a day to spend with us and to share his story tonight. I can't wait for you to all hear about his entrepreneurial journey. He'll probably talk a little bit about his time as a student, and then certainly what his career or how his career has transpired since then. So without further ado, if you can help me in welcoming both my colleague, Paul Jakes, tonight's moderator, and our alumni guest, Mike Vichich.
Are we all right? How's everybody doing? All right, Mike, we brought 100 of my friends here to sit with you and Talk about your life.
What's up, friends?
So, getting right into it. We had a great day. Just got to spend a couple hours with you today and going through that. So, hope you had a really good day.
Yeah, it was awesome.
We start with everybody is, where are you from?
Where am I from?
Yeah.
Earth. North America, United States, Michigan. Brighton is where I grew up, so where I went to high school. Parents were teachers. Mom went to Michigan State. My dad actually went to Notre Dame. So grew up going to MSU games, especially MSU and Notre Dame games. And, fell in love with the school and ended up coming here, graduated in 2006. I studied finance. Can you hear me when I speak this way?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and now I live in Ann Arbor, of all places. Very proud to wear green and white, even this week. But yeah, that's where I'm from.
So, you talked a little bit about what brought you here. Go back to that first day. Maybe if it was the visit that you came here, or maybe first day of school. Do you remember that, or can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I'd come to campus a number of times just because my mom, went to school here. So we went to football games. I feel like I had, kind of had memories of the Red Cedar from when I was a kid. But yeah, my first day of school, I lived in Wilson, fourth floor on the west. My roommate was one of my friends from high school, college. He and I played football together at Brighton. And he and I text every now and again now, like about random things having to do with like the Lions or Spartan football, but that's about it. But yeah, it was, I would say, liberating. I was always the guy that like the second school got out for the summer. This is like back in the day when we had Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
And on my like away message on Instant Messenger, I had like a daily countdown of how many days until we returned to campus. Because it was an amazing time here at MSU.
So when you came in here, you said finance was your major?
Yeah.
Did you think finance in the beginning, or what were you thinking when you first came to school?
No, I wasn't. I didn't really know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew it was something in the business college. My uncle, my mom's brother, was a consultant for a number of years at Ernst & Young, and it seemed cool. And he had like a nice house in Atlanta, and I was like, oh, that sounds like pretty awesome. So I kind of knew about consulting through him, and I had like a vague interest in consulting, and later joined SC&O for anybody who knows that organization, Students Consulting for Nonprofit Organizations. So that was kind of like, I didn't know what that meant. I thought about doing marketing, I thought about doing finance. I was kind of in between those two. And I just felt like I personally chose finance because it was like more number heavy, and that was something that I felt was like an actual skill. But yeah, that was my decision process.
Bring that up all the time because I know several of them out here are really trying to figure out, do I pick that major right away? They feel like they got to figure out their lives, like right as freshmen. You know? And sometimes they do. I mean, they pick that idea, through the beginning, or do they move on to that next thing? And I know a lot of you were switching your majors 2 or 3 times. You stuck with finance the whole time?
I don't think I picked finance until I was a junior.
Gotcha.
Because back in the day, I don't know how it is now, but we got into the road school as juniors.
Yeah.
So I picked finance after that. If I had a do-over, what I say I would do is philosophy and computer science.
Really?
Yeah.
That's different than finance.
Very well.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah. So with jobs, thinking about that, getting towards that junior, senior year, were you interning places? What were you thinking about? What were you thinking of working about? And were you thinking about starting your own business?
No, to the last part. So my freshman and sophomore years, is that right? My freshman summer, I worked as a server at a restaurant in Brighton. It was actually a restaurant inside of a country club. It was like, we didn't belong to any country clubs growing up, but it was just the best paying job I could get. So did that freshman summer, and then sophomore summer, actually no, I did that freshman and sophomore summer. Junior summer, I got an internship at a company called SAP, which is like a German tech company, and coincidentally, that uncle I told you about, the one that lives in Atlanta, like helped me get an interview for that. It was like some people he knew. So I interned at SAP for the summer. Honestly, I don't even remember one thing I did there. It was like pretty, they were gracious for hosting me, but I don't think I added even 1 ounce of value. And then I also joined SCNO my junior year, and I kind of by that point knew that I wanted to do consulting. So I was just trying to like generate leads for going to various different consulting firms. And there happened to be a guy who had graduated from MSU, worked at Accenture, and he helped me get an interview. So that was like fall of my senior year was when I had like, I think it was like November, maybe December of my senior year. I'd like accepted the offer with Accenture, and that's where I joined out of undergrad. Like June, graduated in May, started in June.
So I talked to a lot of students that want to get into consulting. Is it something that you would do again, or to show them into? And did you know much about, well, maybe from your uncle, but did you know much about what consulting meant and what you would do day to day?
I felt like I knew what consulting was, mainly actually from SCNO.
Yeah.
So, I had been at SCNO, we work with like Lansing area nonprofits, and you're on like a 4 or 5 person student team. So I was on a team for 2 semesters, and then on a team for 1 semester, led a team for the next, and then the following year I was vice president of the organization. And at the time, I think there were about 100 people, and we had 10 plus, maybe 12 projects each semester. So I kind of got like the team member view, like the project manager view, and then like the leader view of the organization. And I feel like that definitely equipped me to hit the ground running at Accenture. So yeah, I think that was, definitely a reason why I didn't have to like learn a lot of the basics around how consulting projects work and stuff like that, was because of SCNO.
And then how many years at Accenture, and you moved up in the ranks pretty quick there too?
Yeah, I was at Accenture from 2006 to 2011, so 5 years.
And that's quite a long time, isn't it?
It is,
for
yeah.
consulting?
It's half a decade.
Yeah. But you hear
by
that,
my
there's like a
math.
burnout in 3 years, 3, 4 years maybe. Is 5 a long time, or was there a burnout time there?
I wouldn't say burnout per se. Like, I think it depends a little bit on what your definition of fun is.
Sure.
Like, my definition of fun is like working hard and learning a lot.
Yeah.
And so, I worked hard through there. I moved up the ladder quickly. I think, usually to get promoted to senior manager, it's like about a 8, 9, 10 year journey. And I was able to do it in 5, had a lot of good luck through that as well. And, I just got to a point where I'd like felt like I learned what I was going to learn and wanted to do something different. Like one of the things that I really liked about consulting was you moved on to a different project every 3 months or 5 months. You were on to a different company and saw a different company. Like one takeaway from that is that every company that I've ever seen is a dumpster fire. Every single one. Like I don't even know if there's one exception to that. If there is, I haven't seen it. So, that kind of gave me peace that like, no matter how big or how good the company looks on the outside, there's always issues going on. There's always something to be improved. There's always something broken. There's always something to be fixed. And so that like was empowering. I also learned what I would say like good critical thinking skills through consulting, skills that like even to this day I use. Did I need 5 years to do that? Probably not. Probably could have done that in like 3 and then moved on. Like there was a diminishing return in my opinion after probably 3 years. But I led recruiting for Northwestern and U of M. We didn't recruit at MSU at the time. And I recruited one of my co-founders from Northwestern to Accenture. Wow. And he and I worked together. Like, funny story about how we first met. Like he was supposed to show up for a cell dinner. Like everyone that we gave offers to was supposed to like meet us for dinner, and he no-showed. And so I'm like, who is this guy? So I got his phone number and called him. I'm like, hey, Tyler, are you coming to this? I hadn't met him before. And he showed up, and then we actually hit it off, and we ended up working together, and then later started what became Wisely from there.
So talk about that. Did you leave to start the idea of Wisely? Were you thinking about that when you were at Accenture, or how'd that work?
So Tyler and I, like the client that we were working for at the time was American Express in New York. So I would fly every week. I lived in Michigan, but we flew every week to New York. And, you know, I think I didn't have any kids at the time. I was married, but still am. You know, like we went out to dinner basically every night and just talked. And, you know, he and I both wanted to start a company. We didn't really know what we wanted to do. So we would just kick around ideas, and finally we just worked up enough nerve to say like, hey, why don't we just do that? And the idea was that when you go to pay, this is in 2011, like when you put your phone down, Square, now Block, was just a new thing, right? If you remember, they had like that little credit card reader.
Still have one.
Yeah, you do?
Yeah.
Nice. They had like, you could make a mobile payment, and the iPhone was like 3 years old at that point. So we were like, oh, mobile payments are gonna be everywhere. Next year, we gotta go. And like a decade later, it's still not even where like we thought it was gonna be. So things happen slowly, I guess. But the idea was that when you touch your phone down, it should pick the payment type that is in your interest. Like if you're not paying off your bills, then like it should put the purchase on a low interest credit card. If you are paying your bills, then like you get 5% on gas with this one card. Put gas purchases automatically on that one card. Put restaurant purchases on the one that gives you 5% in restaurants. So like the idea was just like you don't even have to think about it. It just optimizes all the rewards. And then eventually we thought it would be really cool. Like if you go to Google and you search something in like a fraction of a second, they put an ad in front of you, right? We were like, oh, it would be really cool if the selection of the payment was dynamic. Like what if the banks were all bidding for that purchase, right? And maybe this one's like, oh, I'll do 4% rewards. Another one's like 5%. We thought that would be good for consumers and would like drive down interest rates. Anyways, that didn't happen for about a million reasons, but that was the initial idea that we got enough nerve to quit. But interestingly, when I quit, it was like September of 2011. I didn't go like immediately into that. I actually had a part-time job where I worked for 3 days a week for a partner that I worked for at Accenture. And it was a way to like, I didn't have like a savings built up. My parents were teachers. I had to like pay bills. So I had this part-time job where I worked for 3 days a week for this other guy, and then 4 days a week trying to figure out what to do next. And so for like from September until like April of that year, I did that part-time gig. Also started a coding boot camp. I was a finance major, did a lot of work in Excel, but was not anywhere near a programmer, like from a computer science perspective. But I wanted to learn, so I started a coding boot camp in Detroit in 2011. It was called Develop Detroit. Basically, you go in one end as a student not knowing how to build an iPhone app. You go out the other end like knowing the basics, and I think even more importantly, knowing people who are programmers so that you can like be plugged into the community. So I did that for about a year, from like January through January the following year. Didn't see that going anywhere. It was like a hard thing to do. And then, in April of that year started what evolved into Wisely. It began as like that credit card optimization thing. I think maybe like 3 months into it, we got an article, like I had a color photo in the Wall Street Journal. Yeah. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. It taught me a very important lesson, which is that PR doesn't mean anything, actually.
Right.
But that kind of, we were off to the races at that point. That was April of 2012.
So we talk about that. You self-funded for a little bit, getting Wisely going. Did you get into investment, or
Yeah.
what did that look like?
So when I was at State, I think one of the first times they had an entrepreneurship class was 2005 or 6, somewhere in that time, right?
And there was none of this was going on. What we do with the Burgess Institute.
None of it.
You had just one class.
Literally
basically.
one class.
Yep.
And it was a good class, but like none of this structure existed. So
Yeah, thanks.
right on. But yeah, so like my college entrepreneurship professor actually became our first investor, and I'll never forget it. Like he and a friend wrote they each wrote a check for $250K, and I lived in Collingwood and Grand River. It used to be Blockbuster. I don't know what it is now. Next to Jimmy John's. Is Jimmy John's still there?
Anybody know what Blockbuster is?
Yeah. Does anyone know? Is Jimmy John's still there?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. It
So
is.
like I lived upstairs from Jimmy John's.
Gotcha.
And yeah. Anyways, like we deposited those checks in that Chase bank, and I remember thinking like I'd never seen this much money in my entire life. No, it was like I didn't think that. I was kind of like, how are these guys going to get their money back ever? So yeah, so then we did that, took the money in April of 2012. It was at the time it was we called it a priced round. So basically our investors bought 25% of the company for $500K, which we raised on a PowerPoint. We had literally like the worst PowerPoint presentation you've ever seen. Imagine like the worst PowerPoint presentation you've ever seen, and then imagine something 10 times worse than that. That was what we had at the time.
So think about that when you did, because we have a lot of students that have startups here, and they're always asking about raising money, getting angel money, giving friends and family money, even getting down the road to venture capital. Did you know what you were doing?
No.
I mean, you had no clue. You just said, 25%, sure, I need the money.
Right. Yeah. Totally. I had no idea. I actually think I didn't have any idea what I was doing until probably late 2016.
Really?
Yeah. Just School of Hard Knocks was a powerful academic institution.
Yeah.
So we raised the money. I shared with you, like we should have gotten lawyers who were more experienced in tech startup stuff. The lawyers that we worked with at the time did real estate deals. They did like, typical company formation stuff, but they weren't aware of like things that are relevant to a software company.
What was your quote again? I really like that about lawyers.
Cheap lawyers are very expensive.
Cheap lawyers are very expensive. I actually like that a lot.
Yeah. Which coincidentally is like a good way to sell anything that's expensive.
Sure.
Cheap software is expensive software. Cheap fill in the blank is expensive fill in the blank. But yeah, I mean, you don't know, you don't know. So like we did that, we raised the money, and we built an app that was called Glyph, which is an awful name. No one knows how to spell it. Like, come on. It was Glyph. Glyph, like as in hieroglyph. Anyways, not really worth getting into at this point. Anyhow, so we built this app. Actually, at that point, met our other co-founder, who was a Michigan student. I remember like meeting him at some Michigan, like the Ross School of Business. Like we had our first meeting there, and he was like, "Yep, I've built like an app for the U of M basketball team, and I built like an app for my dad last summer as like a fun project." We're like, "You're hired. Cool." His name's Josh, and he's awesome. The three of us still work together to this day. So Josh like built our first version of the app. As I said, it got written up like in Wall Street Journal, got written up in a bunch of other like tech press. But one of the first things you learn when you're building a consumer app is that does anyone know what a funnel is? Like a leaky funnel? You don't want a leaky funnel. So basically like you put new customers in the top of the funnel or like potential customers in the top of the funnel, and then like whatever comes out the bottom is like real money, right? So if you have people falling out of the funnel, those are like people that are like, I downloaded your app and deleted it, or like stopped using it before they turn into money, into revenue. And we were like had the leakiest funnel in the world. Like it was awful. Like basically, I think we could, in hindsight, we could have known like probably within a week that our numbers were awful. Yeah. But like what happens when you get a bunch of press is you get a spike, you get a bunch of downloads or whatever, and then it stops, right? And if it's not like, in my opinion, if the consumer app isn't something that like you're sharing it with him or her, like it's dead in the water, right? It's got to be viral. It's too expensive to acquire users otherwise. And I don't think we didn't know that at the time, even though it's kind of like obvious when you say it. So we had awful retention numbers. Everyone who downloaded the app basically stopped using it, and we're like, thought we could will it into the world, and it just turns out you can't will everything into the world. Like, their product market fit is like easily the most important thing in an early startup, and it took us 5 years to find it. That first app flamed out. I think we killed it after about 9 months. We ended up raising another $1 million from those same investors. Built another app that, so the progression was we built this like app that you open it up at the gas station, it tells you what credit card to use. Sweet. No one used that. Second thing we said was like, well, the data of how people are using these cards is actually interesting. And like with Spotify, it'll recommend other songs based on songs you listen to. Same thing with Netflix, same thing with Amazon. So why doesn't something like that exist for the real world? Like based on where I swipe my credit card, why doesn't it recommend other places? So anyways, so we built that, and it just like the numbers were also brutal because the way you had to do it was you download the app and then you literally give your username and password to your bank account. I thought that was a good idea. Which would actually enable us to like move money. We're like, people will trust us, come on. And so like by that point, I think we figured out how to build good, like nice looking apps that worked. We got featured by Apple in the App Store, and that we're on the front page of the App Store 4 times in a calendar year, and it drove like a really material number of downloads, hundreds of thousands of downloads. But again, like because you had to link to your bank account, like 1% of people did that. Yeah. So whenever you take your funnel, like you put 100 people in the top and only one does the thing that you need them to do, you're dead. And we tried to fix that. We tried to make it easier. I still think it's a cool idea if you could get it to work. You just need a lot of data in order to make it work. So that died after about a year. We burned through damn near $1 million. And then, I read the book, The 4 Steps of the Epiphany. It's of Steve Case, I think, the guy that founded AOL. Right now he does like all the rise of the rest stuff. But one of the things that they talk a lot about in the book is going out and actually talking with customers. Like literally just go talk to a bunch of your prospect customers. And, the quote that sticks with me actually was from the entrepreneurship class at State. A bad day with customers is better than the best day in the office. Like that really stuck with me. A bad day with customers is better than the best day in the office. So I was like, all right, let's try it, because what we've tried so far didn't work. So I lived in Ann Arbor at the time and like just literally started walking around Ann Arbor, talking to restaurant owners. And I was like, hey, we have this app that will tell you recommendations about where to go. How could you imagine using it? And one of the first conversations I had was with the guy that owns a restaurant in Ann Arbor called Monty, great pizza restaurant for those of you who know it. He was like, dude, last thing I need is like another app. I have Google, I have Yelp, I have OpenTable, blah, 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 blah. I got all these apps. I don't need to manage another one. But what I do want to know is when like someone who's a high potential customer walks into my restaurant. So that we can make sure that we roll out the red carpet for them. And I was like, that makes sense, because again, I was a server and like just kept all the knowledge on who the customers were between my ears. Like, yeah, it makes sense. You need to have like institutional knowledge of who the customers are in a restaurant and know what type of beer you like. So I could like bring that over and say, hey man, good to see you. Set it down. You're like, that dude knows me. I matter here. And it makes you want to come back.
Yep.
So that was the third app that we built. It was a loyalty app, had decent numbers, not good enough though, but like that was kind of the end of the road. At the end of 2015, we were like running out of cash. It was clear that we were not going to be able to raise any more money. So we were like probably dead. And at the end of 2015, like around the holidays of 2015, we had no money. We were like, should we shut down or keep going? Fortunately, like I had worked at Accenture and knew like the worst case scenario was like I could always go get another job. I wasn't super worried about that. But I felt privileged to have the opportunity to build a startup, and so did my co-founder. So we just kept working. We actually missed payroll for 6 months, and like I had a mortgage. At this point, I had like a 6-month-old, and we were married. My wife was in grad school, so like we were just spending money, taking in literally zero, and it was the most insanely stressful time in my life. Easily, like, fun fact, I wet the bed. I was like, as an adult man, I was like, that stressed, because I thought I'd lost like $2 million worth of people. Imagine that, like you lost $2 million. Are you kidding me? So, that was a heavy time, and fortunately, we just like kept working. But yeah, that was like easily like one of the. There's always like low points, but that was one of the very low points.
How did you come out of that? I mean, what was the big epiphany or big change?
I mean, first of all, my wife didn't divorce me.
That's a good thing.
That's a plus.
Yes.
It would have been very easy because like that was not a fun time. But like she supported me. She's like, "You'll figure it out." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So that was really helpful. My wife works in mental health. My other co-founder's wife was a marriage therapist. And when you're like in that hard of a time, like people get chippy. You know what I mean? Yep. Even good friends, like he and I were good friends, and we would get in arguments. And I really give credit to our wives for like giving us the skills to like actually, because I say he's like my second husband. Like to actually talk about issues and be able to like overcome them, I think was key. Another moment was like in Ann Arbor, there's this thing called the A2 New Tech Meetup. And did I tell you the story?
No.
So basically it's like every month people get together and they pitch their startup to like a group of 300 people. At least that's what it was at the time. I don't know if it's still even a thing. But so I get up there, I'm like, gonna show this cool new app. I take my phone, plug it in, starts projecting. Like a moron, I forgot to turn off messages. And like my wife, can't make this up, she texted me, "Are you coming with me to therapy tonight?" And it was like in front of legit 300 people.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm talking, I didn't see it. People are like laughing, some people are laughing, some people are like, oh, and I'm like, what? I turn around and look, and saw it like right before the message went away. And that moment was like a defining one, because like I had been outed in front, like we were getting destroyed. Like it was tough. And I just said like, look, I'm fortunate to be married to someone who's willing to like talk about issues, and I think as long as you're willing to talk about problems and be honest with yourself about them, you'll get over them, and like I think we'll be better for it. And like people clapped or whatever, but like I remember walking off stage then, being like kind of like weirdly giddy, because like it was out there, like people knew that we were getting crushed on like every aspect of life. So that was like a moment too where I just like stopped caring. Because there's this, like there's so much pressure, like how big's your team? Oh, my team is 37 people. Like none of that shit matters actually. So I just like that helped me like dismiss all of the vanity stuff and just like focus. So in hindsight, I didn't know it at the time, but in hindsight, that was a defining moment.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. That's cool that you can share that now too. Back then, you're probably like, I don't want to share.
Yeah, exactly. No, totally.
So fast forward a little bit. You built a new product, raised some more money.
Yeah.
And where did it go from there? And I know, talk a little bit about COVID too. I know a lot of times COVID can hurt people, but it seems like things helped in a way.
Yes and no. Like we. So, in like late 16, we dropped all the consumer stuff. We just said like, we're gonna build software for restaurants. It's way easier to do that. You can like literally talk to them and be like, oh, cool, I'll build that. And then you'll pay me? Yeah, we'll pay. Okay, cool. And then you build it and you get paid. Like building B2B software is a lot, I think, easier than consumer. So we did that in like late 16 is when our first version of the new thing, it was a wait list for restaurants. So, if you can put your name on the list, we'll text you when your table's ready, sort of thing. we built that, and from then on, it was like kind of up and to the right. Like we doubled, tripled sales year over year. We're really efficient with money. So like that went well. Like it looked like from 2016 through like now, we look competent. But if you look from like 2016 before, we look like morons. So it took like 5 years to become serviceable as a CEO. And so, when COVID happened, we were probably $350-ish thousand in revenue a month, like cash coming in the door, which is helpful. And, one of my board members was at some meeting in I forget where it was, like in Saudi Arabia or something for some startup thing. And a bunch of people gathered there. This is in like February of 2020. And he's like, dude, like save every penny you have, stop spending a dime. This is gonna be bad. He was talking to a bunch of people who were from Italy who were there. And if you remember, like early pandemic, Italy got crushed. Yeah. And I was like, okay. That was like at the end of February. Then COVID really got bad in New York, and like the NBA shut down. I think it was like March 14th of 2020. And like restaurants were closed, and you don't need a wait list if your restaurant's closed, right? Like restaurants weren't paying their rents. Like literally they weren't paying rent. So our revenue went from $350K a month to zero overnight.
Wow.
And we had, what was months of runway turned into like weeks of runway. And I'm like, this is it. We're dead. Like 10 years, like this is all gonna be vanished. And so to try to keep the lights on, we had 27 people. We had to let, unfortunately, 13 of them go, which was brutal. And because no one knew how long this was gonna go on. So did that. So at the beginning of March, we were 27, went down to 14 by the end of March. And then PPP hit, which was insanely helpful, kept a lot of our customers in business, which then, of course, kept us in business. We signed up a couple of really big brands. At the time, PF Chang signed up, First Watch signed up, and they went live quickly, so that meant like more revenue started coming in, and we were able to like start building the team back. But I like if you just like pause in that like March 2020, we had to lay everyone off. I'm like, morale's gonna go through the toilet. People are gonna quit. Like, we're gonna get nothing done. And it like shocked me because the exact opposite happened. Like, morale actually went up, and we got more stuff done. And I remember just like thinking about that. It was such a that was not my expectation at all. So I think there was some hard choices that we had to make there, but generally speaking, like we had our more senior people around. The junior folks who were getting things done, but were not performing at the next level. Those folks weren't on the team, and so like we were able to like the people who were there building. They had they were able to focus. There were fewer bugs. Like they were able to build stuff that scaled better. You didn't have to rebuild it as you brought on more customers. So we just got like more leverage out of each individual person on the team, and that was a lesson. Like to this day, I will pay more for someone who's got the experience that you need. Back to that whole like cheap lawyers or expensive lawyers things. Like you have to pay what it takes. I was always cheap on like payroll and stuff before that. I would rather have fewer people and just like pay them really well. That's kind of my general takeaway from that.
So going forward, things were going well, money was going well. Did you raise more money, and then what did you think about actually the idea of selling the company?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
So we we raised $3 million from individuals. We never raised from like a venture fund. We were close to doing it at the end. I'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, we raised like $3 million, and just like every dollar that we generated, we just like plowed back into the company to grow faster. And then at the end of 2020, we were like growing again, right? Like we had kind of come out of the early pandemic and we're growing again. And we had planned a 2.5x that year. Generally, when you're building a SaaS company, if you want to grow ARR by $1, let's just say you want to grow by $1 million, it would be really like efficient if you burned $1 million to get there, right? So if you want to go from 9 to 10 million in ARR, like generally speaking, investors would think, oh, you spent $1 million to do that? You burned $1 million to do that? Cool, nice job. And so we were trying to get from like roughly 10 to 25 million. And we were efficient, so I was like, we need at least 15 million bucks to do that, and that only gets us 12 months, right? Because we were trying to do that in a year. So, that told me like we need to raise probably 30 million, to take it really to the next level. So in like summer of 2021, I'd been doing it for almost a decade. 99% of my net worth was in the company. Like we had investors that had put millions of dollars in like 10 years ago. So they weren't like, hey, like, let's wrap this up. Yeah. Music's playing, or music's stopping rather. But like, I think everybody was kind of like, we should consider raising, but we should also take a look around and see what we could sell it for. And long story long, we ended up like having a couple of offers from different venture funds, like blue chip, San Francisco-based investors, to raise 25. One offer was to raise 25 million bucks on like a $225 million pre-money. The other one was to raise 50 on a $250 million pre-money. And I just thought to myself, like these investors, at this stage they probably expected like 5x, maybe 10x would be like a really good case. But if you have a $300 million post, 300 million times 5 is 1.5 billion. Times 10 is 3 billion. And I'm like,
is that another 10 years?
Exactly. Yeah. Like that means we got to take the company public.
Yeah.
And we had all the confidence in the world. Like we had a really good team, but that just wasn't the next 10-year script that we wanted. So we were fortunate that we also had two other companies, Olo, who eventually acquired us, and then one other one who submitted letters of intent, which basically meant like we'd like to buy the company. And so we ended up choosing Olo for a lot of different reasons, but our customers were the same, products were complementary, and the values of Olo's were very similar to the values of Wisely's. So, in terms of like finding the right home, we wanted to do that. We actually like cared about our customers and what we had promised them, and we felt that Olo was the easily the best case for how that everything we'd built would continue to operate the way we thought it should into the future. So we ended up, September of last year, we ended up signing an LOI. I remember being up at like 3 a.m. with the board, like negotiating things while I was on a trip in Texas, and it was crazy, like going through that period. But then from like September, we signed the letter of intent, and then basically we ended up, you sign the letter of intent, which is like, how much are you going to buy it for? Like key terms of the deal. And then you go through another round of, they call it due diligence. But you sign like a merger agreement, which is like the definitive docs to actually like, we're doing this. And then you have 2 weeks after that until you close. So you have the letter of intent, or at least we had the letter of intent, the signing, and the closing. Closing is when like money comes into bank accounts. That's like what, that's like the moment.
Day.
Yeah. Well, signing was a good day too, because like, every time you go through these steps, like the probability of it actually going through goes up. And our lawyers are like, we don't really know Olo. They hadn't bought a company before. Some companies, a letter of intent is like, take it to the bank. It's 98% chance you're going to close. Others, it's like a 50% chance, and we don't know because we haven't seen this before. So I'm like, what? Like, we just signed the LOI, and it doesn't guarantee that we're going to close. Like, AKA, look at all the stuff going on with Twitter right now. But yeah, so we signed it in late October and then closed like almost exactly a year ago.
So you didn't get that paper check that you're able to walk over to Chase and Turn it in here.
That
you didn't get to do that.
It was a thing. Like my investors were like, I'm telling you, this is gonna sound weird, but like sit with your wife and like refresh the chase screen, you know. And they're like, that is a moment you'll never forget. And it was so true. Like it was a total life-changing thing, unlike anything I had ever seen before. And honestly, like there were so many moments where I thought it was dead.
Yeah.
Same with Jen, my wife. She's like, had written it off. Not me, but like had written the idea off of like an exit like that happening. She'd written it off a bunch of times.
That's amazing. That had to be a really cool day.
Yeah, it was wild.
I have so many more questions, but want to get into some questions from the audience here. We can get into more if they don't, but questions to you. Raise your hand, please. And I think we have a microphone, Chris, out there. Anybody have questions?
Oh, come on. Here we go.
There we
One in the
go.
middle, too.
I wanted to ask, how much did you end up selling that company for?
Totally public knowledge, but 187 million.
Who else over here?
Thank you for being here. I was just curious, how did you stay motivated in the times where you wanted to quit and when it wasn't easy?
You know, for me, I don't know that it's necessarily transferable, but for me, I often thought about myself when I'm an old man. And when I'm 90, the story that I tell myself is that I know that I would be pissed at myself if I gave up. And that was like the thing that always motivated me. There's like a meme that's on the internet that shows like a guy and he's like digging for diamonds, and he's like, you know, dug this whole way, and then like he quits, and like right on the other side of the wall there's like a diamond thing, and I felt like we were getting better all the time. Like it was a fact, we were getting better. I was learning, we were improving, we were having fun too. By the way, I think that's really important. And you know, like I had the safety net of I could always go get a real job, and also like when I'm 90, I would want myself to have done this, and that is kind of the two things that kept me moving forward. And again, like if there's other stuff in there too, like if my wife had said like, nope, can't do it anymore. By the way, she was at the grocery store 3 different times when our credit cards were cut off. She's like, womp, you know, like goes to swipe the card, and it's like, declined. And she's like, that's weird. Try another one. Declined. And then, Mike, you know, like that. You don't want that wrath a lot. And you know, if she had like said can't do it anymore, then that probably would have been game over as well. But you bet.
That's awesome. Any other questions?
With you having so many companies and having to start over so many times, you must have been, I want to say, connected to Wisely. So was it difficult for you to just like say, oh yeah, I'll take that money and let go of what you created or something that your name is attached to?
Yeah. You know, like I would say it's like I haven't like fully let go, right? Because I still work at Olo, and you know, the team that reports to me is like the product and the engineering team. So as far as like the vision and what the problems are that we're working on and how we prioritize them, like that's still, you know, up for my team and me to decide. But it is like undeniably part of a much bigger equation now. One of the things that I've come to believe is no matter who you are, especially if you're the CEO, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is that literally everything is your fault. Every problem in the company is your fault if you're the CEO. Like, it's a fact. And the good news is you can solve it. So, you know, when you are the founder and CEO of a company, like you can prioritize what you think matters, but once you sell it, like it's not your company anymore, right? And you have to be cool with that. You have to like fit into the values of the new company. So it's definitely been a process I now report to Olo's CEO. It's been like, hey, here's how I would approach this. What do you think? You know, and like work with him. Sometimes he disagrees. And at the end of the day, it's his call. Like that was the deal that we made moving forward. But I would still say that like, as far as being able to like say what a problem is and say, here's what I think we should do, here are the other options, here's why I think they suck. Like that like CEO mindset, I still think serves me in the current role. But again, it's like at the end of the day, it's his company now. So, yeah.
Back here. I was thinking about that before you asked this question. We had another alum that we asked the same question about when you see your baby and maybe they change it a little bit and you don't have control of it. And he was very, modest, but he just said, "Well, they paid me in cash." So,
Right.
so
Yeah, that helps.
that helps.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Did you have a question here? Yeah. I thought that was an interesting answer.
Yeah.
Out of the different services that Wisely provides, which one is the leading one in terms of revenue? Like
Good
which
question.
one makes-
Are you looking at our website?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Good job. So the one that, like, at the time when we did the deal, we're a public company now and we don't break that out, so I can't tell you. But when we did the deal, like the product line that was like our initial one was the waitlist and reservation system, and that was, because it had been around the longest, the largest. It is only relevant though for what are called full service restaurants, so basically a restaurant with a server that comes over to your table. And that's like maybe 10% of the population of restaurants. There's like a ton that don't have that. So they call it TAM, total addressable market. The TAM for our waitlist and reservations product was smaller, even though it was like our biggest by revenue. And there are others that we think the TAM is like massive for, and we're kind of investing more heavily. I mean, we've invested in all of them, but like even more heavily in those, in like what we call CDP and marketing automation. So those are more like customer data related products. So 5 years from now, it'll probably be one of those two. Yeah.
Kind of off topic, do you still have your coding bootcamp thing in Detroit?
No. Well, it evolved from something called Develop Detroit to something called Grand Circus. So Grand Circus is still in Detroit. I actually don't know. I'm like an advisor to Grand Circus. I don't have really any day-to-day involvement there anymore. I'm not sure if they're doing iPhone and like development anymore. What I saw there was like, after we did that, we had 4 classes, like 4 cohorts. And this was in 2011. Like we'd had probably 15 or 20 students in each of the classes. So there was like 60 people. And each time we went through it, it got harder and harder to find more people. Fewer and fewer, there were like fewer and fewer people who wanted to learn how, because we had just like cycled some of them through. So, I think what they evolved into was more of like, hey, we're gonna help people learn the programming languages that are relevant for like GM or Ford, people who are hiring like tons of software engineers in Detroit. It's less of a, each person pays $4K and goes through this program now though.
If you remember or not, we tried to develop Lansing.
Yeah, yes,
I
yeah.
think if I go deep, I think I still have a flyer
Really?
somewhere. Yeah.
We should
if
pull that up.
If I find it, I'll show it to you.
Yeah,
It
totally.
actually didn't work.
It didn't work. Didn't work in Detroit,
No,
like,
didn't work.
yeah. But there are now more coding boot camps though, like
yeah.
Grand Circus, General Assembly. Usually they're in like, New York, Chicago style cities, less so Detroit or Lansing.
Yeah. Got time for one more? One last one? Yeah, go ahead.
So I kept hearing like you raise like millions of dollars, and to be honest, as a student who's broke right now, I mean that's like really a big money, right? So I just kept wondering like, while you raise money, you need to like convince and persuade the investors like how great your business models are and everything. But I was just wondering, how did you like persuade those investors? Like how did you keep up raising the money?
Yeah.
And that's one of the strategy.
I mean, having been a broke college student as well, I empathize. It still seems like an insane amount of money to me too, by the way. But I guess like it comes down to the way I'll answer that is like when I invest in companies now, like an early stage company, it's like all about the founder. Do you believe in them? Because that is literally what you're betting on. It's not the business model. It's not the company. It's like you as a human. Do I think you'll figure it out. That's obviously a super subjective thing, but so I think like there's a bunch of different things that if you unpacked that, there's a bunch of things that go into it. You know, I think for me, like some of the things I would look for, like every single one of you is smart enough, right? I don't think that like 5 IQ points here or there really matters. So like I'd take that one off the table. Like, do you really care? Are you passionate? Will you just grit through stuff? Because every person I talk to, every founder I talk to, their company almost died, at least once. It's like, it happens. And will you quit, or will you keep finding a way and keep figuring it out? Those are the things that I really would look for. And then you look for like passion. Do you really care about the problem? Do you really care about the customer? Can you build a team? And you know, a team that is better than you in like every way. Those are the things that I think early stage you look for. Also, like there are some things that matter. There's a blog post if you just Google like top 50 blogs on product market fit. I would read every single one of those. There's one from Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz, the venture firm. And he said, like, you know, if you had to pick product, market, team, which of those 3 do you think is most valuable? Raise your hand if you think the product is the most important. No one? Really? 1. I respect that. Market? 2, 3. Team. Everybody. He says, the way that he answers that, the answer is market. So nice job, Fort Lauderdale. But the answer is market, and the reason is like the way he describes it is if a great team meets a shitty market, market wins. If an okay team meets a great market, market wins, right? And that I think is like such a core point to like wrap your mind around. Back to my earlier point, you just simply can't will some things into the world. Now, you could say, well, wouldn't a good team like eventually find a good market? Sure. So I think team is super important as well. But that's another key part of it is like, who are you selling to? If you're selling something to people who have no money and like the sales cycle is brutal and there's 15 other companies who've all died along the way, that's going to be hard to convince investors of. I think one thing, final thought, one of my investors said to me, like, dude, like, investors only care about one thing. How are you going to turn their $1 into 10? And if it achieves like some great outcome for humanity along the way, that's even better. But like at the end of the day, they're investing. And so how do you turn $1 into 10? And just being like super clear about that, I think is another thing that would be appealing to investors. Also, having gone to Michigan State helps too.
That's right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mike. And if you have a few minutes, stick around. They may have a couple more questions. Let's give them a big hand. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.